See, I was doing fine. My life was good. I was making progress, but because of the expectations that allowed others to have about me, for example, maybe I'll call someone and be like, "Oh, you sound the same as I knew you in Nigeria."
Yeah.
And obviously there was this mindset that, oh, because you'd gone abroad, you meant to sound different. So things like that then kind of caused me to, in a way, not leave my truth, or like embrace who I was or the realities that I was living in.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Junaid. Welcome to the From Black Men podcast, the podcast where we discuss Black men's stories across different aspects of their lives. Today I'll be talking with Dekunle, and the topic we'll be talking about is shame and how it can impact different aspects of our lives. So, Dekunle, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you for having me on the podcast. So, my name is Dekunle, and where do I start from? So, I am an economist by profession, but on the side, I also think about a lot of these deep, ugly emotions that tend to detract from us living wholesome, authentic lives. So, yeah, I do write Substacks. I put a few videos on Instagram when I'm bored. So, yeah, that's I think that's like a brief intro about myself.
Okay. So you mentioned that you like to discuss certain emotions. So
Yeah.
what would you say influences that?
So I think the genesis of this was because I've found that a lot of times we focus on trying to like live, happy lives, and we try to focus on the how-tos of living a good life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But any one of us you can go online and search for the 5 steps to happiness, and you can have like ChatGPT even provide that for you. But the thing that affects, or the thing that inhibits us from actually achieving that is what I've come to realize, that if we can focus on, hone in on that and understand it, that would then release us and free us to really chase the wholesomeness that we're looking after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for yourself,
Yeah.
with that, could you take us back to a time where you may have experienced shame and how you navigated that?
Yeah. Interestingly, so thinking back, I think from childhood, obviously now I was able to come to understand this now that I've become an adult, or like a young adult. So I found that like from growing up, based on wanting to belong, based on, I guess, the things that were absent from my life, from the things that I saw in other people's life that were missing from mine. These things had a way of pretty much putting like a garment of shame upon even like a young kid, that we literally shouldn't be having to deal with such dark emotions. So I'll say, yeah, it's a link, and I think every one of us, this is something that's very fundamental to human existence. No matter who you are, no matter how long you've lived, it's something that we all have to deal with.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the goal is not to completely get rid of shame, but it's to build something that's called like a shame resilience, where you can then manage it, and then still live the best life that you can live. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, so it's one, and I think another thing that gets in the way is because of the nature of shame, a lot of people are afraid to speak about it. So one, like we've established that it's a general human condition, but the fear of speaking about it empowers it. So if you don't, expose shame to the light, you can't start to deal with it. So I guess, like I said, this is something personally I found myself like drawn to deal with this deep, dark emotions, to unravel it and then enable people live freely, live in the liberty of authenticity.
Yeah. Okay. So you described that with shame as one of those emotions that is dark. It's a dark emotion, and that it needs to be unraveled. So what was your process of unraveling it and it not being something that was hidden?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think personally, I kind of stumbled into it. So maybe 2 years ago, prior to that time, I've always just lived a very kind of secluded life. So like I said, shame thrives when there is secrecy, when there is judgment, when there's also silence. So a lot of the ways I was living my life was as a result of the shame that I was living with, right? So I stumbled across a book by Brent Brown. I don't know if you've heard of.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Oh yeah. So I read the book, and literally like while going through the book, like walking through the book, he spoke about several things. About sometimes a lot of us that we think that we're perfectionists. It's actually we're trying to reach for something that is unattainable, and the thing that is fueling that ambition is actually might just be us trying to deal with or run away from shame. So for me, that whole, reading the book and then thinking about my life, I realized that because of I felt I hadn't achieved certain things that I'd always assumed I would achieve or attain to, that then, put on this, I would describe it as a garment of shame. Like it's unexplainable, but it just affects how you live, who you are. And it makes us anxious as well because, the expectations that you have about yourself, maybe as a child you thought that at 20 you'd be married or at 25 you'd be married.
Yeah.
Like even the expectations that society has put upon you.
Yeah.
But because for whatever reason you've not been able to meet up to that, you don't feel that you're worthy. There's that unworthiness that comes about. So personally, I'll give you like a very crude example.
Yeah.
So I've lived in 3 countries. This is my 3rd country I'm currently living in. So obviously I'm Nigerian, by the way I speak, you can tell.
Yeah.
So I lived in Italy for about 6 years, and because I'd felt that a lot of people would have assumed I would have attained certain things because I'd moved abroad, but I felt that I hadn't attained to those levels. So it kind of pushed me to be secluded and to live in secrecy. I was doing fine. My life was good. I was making progress, but because of the expectations that allowed others to have about me, for example, maybe I'll call someone and be like, "Oh, you sound the same as I knew you in Nigeria."
Yeah.
And obviously there was this mindset that, oh, because you'd gone abroad, you meant to sound different. So things like that then kind of caused me to, in a way, not leave my truth or like embrace who I was or the realities that I was living in. So, like I said, I've been there and read that book. It didn't help me embrace that. Listen, I'm on a journey.
Yeah.
And I have to own this journey. I might not be where thought I would be. I might not be where people would thought I would be, but I've made a lot of progress, and that is something worth celebrating and owning. So for me, that's been like the process, to come to that realization.
Yeah. So Brene Brown's book has played quite a big influence on your journey.
It has. Dan also speaking to people as well. I found that if you're blessed with like a community, be just one friend, it could be a Christian community, it could be a family member that you can speak to as well. Because like I said, shame thrives in secrecy. So when you can share your story with someone that's earned the right to listen to it, then you can then start to unravel and bring that dark part of your life into the light. And once that's done, shame then loses its grip and what empowers it. And then you can then begin to break it. So like, the book helped, but then coupled with the book, God then also like in his sovereignty brought people my way that were able to I was able to speak to about some of the things that I was struggling with, and then eventually I was then able to break through, and that literally is what led us to this. Because prior to last year, I literally had been my Instagram was never. I've had Instagram for like 8-10 years, nothing on it, but I always had this passion to help people like live the best lives, help people like think really well about themselves. So I was like, at the end of the day, like, listen, this is who I am. This is the passions I have. This is a channel, a medium through which I can share. So, and then, imagine if I had never done that, we would not be here today. So,
wow.
It's quite interesting, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. So you've come on a journey of saying that you experienced shame quite a lot in your childhood. You related it to that sense of belonging, being a big part of it. And then also this journey of learning that shame only thrives in secrecy. So you said that one thing that you've done is speaking to other people. Now, what would you say to someone who doesn't find it easy to talk to somebody else? Because anything that's hidden or shameful, naturally you want to keep it to yourself. So what does that look like, deciding, let me step out and actually share it with someone else? How did you decide to do that?
It's you're right, like it's a very difficult thing to do. But I would say, like, every one of us, by God's design, there will always be that one person, obviously. And if you're a Christian, if you feel that that's lacking, you can always pray. But even if like, I don't know, if prayer is not solving it for you, you can always find the communities online, in the local communities as well, where you can go to, and maybe even speak to a stranger. So like sometimes it might be difficult to speak to someone that you know because of that relationship, but it's worth reaching out to a random person online and just having a conversation. I've had like several people like literally just message me online and, can I speak to you, or this is what I'm going through, and just having a conversation helps to unravel and unburden things that are weighing on them. So I would say for that person, if that's what you're going through, if you can find a friend at least that you can speak to, go online. There are people that are kind of saying these things that we're saying. Reach out to them, and I'm sure there'll be someone that'll be willing to listen to you and walk you through the process to then come to the other side of shame and where freedom and authenticity lies.
So I was going to ask actually, so with your journey of navigating shame,
Yeah.
speaking to other people and them being there to help you lift the burden and things of that nature, during the times where you were experiencing it, how did it affect your view of self? Like, did it affect your view of self in any way? Did it impact the relationships in your life in any way? Like, how did it impact you and outside of you?
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I think shame would always affect, because obviously shame happens with people, and also you heal. You also need people to heal as well. So it does affect you in terms of like the way you see yourself. Like, you don't see yourself as worthy of love. You're very critical about yourself. It would even push you to do things that kind of against your values, just so that you can fit in with people as well. So for the person, I think it kind of wraps, like it diminishes your value, your self-confidence is eroded. Even the things that you can do, it prevents you from reaching out for even opportunities. So yeah, it does. And then by extension, it then obviously, a lot of times you'll be jealous of people around you, not people that that you can do what they're doing, but you don't just have the confidence to go for the same opportunities. So it can have very drastic impacts on you. And I think these dark emotions, what they do also is that once one can come into your life and make abode, they have a way of also drawing other ones. So you find that shame, whether it's shame, you would most likely find fear as well. You'd also find I don't name it, anger. You would find resentment. So these things have a way of then building like a stronghold in the life of the person. Obviously, if you then, there are two ways to look at this from a Christian, from biblical point of view as well. There's also the aspect of, even when the Bible speaks about shame, and I think it's key at this point to differentiate between shame and guilt. So guilt speaks to what you've done, but shame speaks to who you are. So a lot of times, it's okay to feel guilt. You've done something wrong. Guilt leads to a lot of positive outcomes, because if you feel guilty for a wrongdoing, you can then change your behavior, you can then repent, you can then restitute. But if you feel that you're like a bad person, that's more difficult to deal with. I think I've kind of gone off on a tangent, but I hope that answers.
Okay. So you've made a distinction between shame and guilt. So shame being like, is almost someone identifying as being I'm bad because of X, Y, and Z. And then guilt more so being focusing on the action, and then you being able to change it. Okay. So with shame for you now, when it crops up, how do you respond to it? Because I don't think it's something we may only feel once and then never feel it again. So when it does come up, what's your natural response now?
That's really good. So I think in general, like I would say maybe 3-4 things. So the first is understanding what shame is, and then recognizing the messages and the expectations to trigger for you. So for each person, this will be different. So first of all, I need to understand what shame is, what it looks like, and also shame is a full on. It has like an emotional, like a physical emotional response. So for somebody, it might be your palms become sweaty. It could be, I don't know, a rush of emotion. So you need to also understand how shame manifests in your own life. And number 2 is then, I guess, having like a critical awareness that also helps you have a reality check about the messages and expectations that are being thrown at you, and the ones that kind of tell you that because of you're imperfect, you're inadequate. So I think that is very much out there in today's culture. Every one of us were imperfect, and that's the truth. We're imperfect, we're also broken. But that doesn't make us less. That doesn't make us inadequate. So understanding that you're the things that make you broken are lovely, is what shapes you, is what beautifies your life, and then embracing that reality. I guess the third thing is then, like we said, sharing your story. So like always having that community around that you can share, you can have those conversations with, at length, and that there will be no judgment. It's free of judgment, free of prejudice. And then I guess the last thing is then also like imbibing shame into your grammar, because a lot of us we are afraid to like actually use shame in our day-to-day vocabulary. So like speaking shame, a lot of my close friends know that I say that I'm shameless. Like there's nothing I cannot. Like there's nothing like shame would prevent me from reaching for. But that's because I've obviously knowing where I've come from and the journey I've been on. I've been very intentional in also like saying the things like putting shame to the corner where it deserves to be. So I'll say these 4 things, if you in your growth and your maturity in overcoming shame, these are 4 things I would say are quite key in building that resilience to deal with shame.
I really like how you wrapped that up, because you started off with describing us having a garment of shame, and then you transitioned into building like shame resilience, and now you're saying that you're in a place where even to your friends you're like, I'm just a shameless person.
Literally.
This isn't like it's got nothing on me. So there's been a full circle transition here.
Definitely, it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and I think it's beautiful to see obviously how far I've come, and then being on this journey to also help bring other people out of it as well.
So far, we've established what shame is, and you've spoken about it, in the past, your experience of it, and also what it's been like navigating and overcoming that. Now, in terms of where you are now as a man, like what are some of the things you may be navigating currently, or things that you may have seen your male friends navigating in the area of shame that you think would be?
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Yeah, I would say that obviously it's every one of us, even based on what society's culture's expectations, we all deal with shame, especially as men. And I think the pressure on men also is serious. I mean, I was having a conversation with some friends, and we're saying how obviously there's this expectation that men need to have a certain level of wealth to even get into relationships.
Yeah.
And so like for guys that maybe are struggling or are just like maybe in low paid industries, there can be some sort of shame attached to lack of finances or lack of influence or lack of flashy things, and a nice car, a nice house. So I think generally in today's day and age, a lot of men in our culture face shame in this regard. And I guess the way to then start to deal with it is a couple of things. One, having that community where guys can speak to guys. I think that is missing largely. And there's also this trend where, obviously I keep going back to religion because my Christianity is quite front and center, but you find also that even in the church, guys are missing. So, and that's one of the places where we can in a way address shame in a wholesome and in a very constructive way as well. So we don't have role models in music or in media that guys can look up to or learn from. And the things that we're seeing in movies also are not really helpful in terms of dealing with shame. So like, say that there's lack, there is want, there is something that you've not been able to outgrow. The alternative are more negative vices. So there are 3 ways in general that people respond to shame. So a lot of people, they run away. So say there's something that brings about shame, you go into secrecy, you go into hiding, you seclude. Others, they go towards, so that means they appease or please. Others go against, where they then they're aggressive, or they try to, confront shame with shame, where you're then being cruel. So I think the third one is what we find a lot amongst guys, where obviously because of the things you don't have, the things that are missing from your life, you then lean towards aggression. So I think one of the ways we can then start to, correct things is our brothers, our sisters, aunties, fiancés, girlfriends, whatever, help to reinforce that you're more than what you have. You're more than the car you drive. You're more than the job you do. Also then change cultural narratives that obviously money is good, but there's a place for it. Influence is good, but there's a place for it. And then I guess just being understanding and supportive would really help. And then guys as well, build that community. Find male friends that can support you. People that you can actually be real with, that you can, be vulnerable, open, honest with. I think that would then help, start to build and mend the brokenness that we can see everywhere.
I really like the point that you pointed out what mothers, aunties, sisters, girlfriends, all of that could do. I think that's very useful for women to know, because sometimes you don't really know what to do or how to respond in those situations.
Which goes back to like the failings of society. So if everyone kind of understands that firstly we're all in this together, and the thief out there comes from home, has a mother. So every broken person has people they're connected with. So it's always from like, if you trace it back, there'll be a failing. Someone failed, the mom failed, the dad failed, the sibling failed. So I think this is where the African culture is different. They believe that raising a child is the job of a community, not just a family. So if we, teachers in church, the one child that you if you're like, I don't know, say it's children class teacher in church, for example, you need to understand that those guys that you have in your church, in your class, you need to be like take the job extra serious, because someday soon the brokenness they experience is going to affect society at large, and then start to plug those gaps in whatever way we can. On social media as well, we should try to like not promote content that doesn't make sense, content that just people like everyone can just go online and just say anything they want. So whatever we can do to be that positive light, to be the one that brings about the change that we seek, would go a long way in starting to like mend the brokenness that we see around.
I like how you've wrapped that up, because you've brought it together from both sides. There's a role that females can play in a man's life, but also the role that the men can play in men's lives too. So it's a whole communal effort.
Definitely. And also like the guys themselves also taking ownership. Understanding that, listen, you're a man, even if I don't know, culture is a hot mix of a lot of things. You're still a man, and you most likely would lead a home, have kids that will look up to you. So seek to be whole. Every one of us, by default, as we go through life, life batters us in different ways. But being aware that you're not perfect and not being comfortable with your level, don't just explain it away. Understand that like there are things that you need to fix, and actively go after knowledge to like reinvent yourself and be the person that you need to be for the people around you. Also, I think it's like you said, so it's people around you, females, males, and then also like you taking ownership of your own development and becoming who you need to be.
Thank you for sharing everything in relation to shame, and the way you've just broken it down in different aspects as well. So before you go, can you just share more about your social media, how we can find you and everything like that?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. It's been a great conversation as well. So you can find me on Instagram mainly at Dekunle Adekunbi, where I share like weekly reels, obviously share my Substack writings as well, where I speak on things bordering on self-development, authenticity, wholesome living. And if you're interested in, I don't know, apologetics, discipleship, evangelism, I also lead like a group called Commission. We've got an Instagram page as well. Do follow us. But yeah, you would probably see me around doing the things I do.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.